sleepy heads. Get up, get out of bed. Cheer up, the sun is red. Live, love, laugh and be happy. What if
Hello and welcome to this week's Robin Pod Weekly, which is powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre, the only car specialist trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. And I'm sure you are all viva la vida to join me as we bring Graham from the Robin Pod regulars for this week's Robin Pod Weekly. Graham, huge announcement before we start talking about anything to do with rugby league. Coldplay are coming to Craven Park in 2025.
Yeah, fantastic news. Two nights in August 2025. Just getting them nicely warmed up for their stint at Wembley. Coldplay, one of the biggest bands on the planet, I think it's fair to say, guaranteed sellouts. And whether you like Coldplay or not, as a fan of the club and as an income generation for the club, I think this is going to be a fantastic opportunity to capitalise on that, but also to showcase the stadium as a potential venue for other big name acts of the future. So yeah, I think it's a real feather in the cap, whoever's brokered that one behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it is great, isn't it? I mean, Coldplay, you know, they pick where they play, basically, don't they? It's not the other way around. So the fact that they are coming to Craven Park, which will be pretty much 2 warm-up gigs, won't it, on the 18th and 19th of August before they do a 10-night, no doubt, sellout tour at Wembley, the only European date, so it's fantastic that they are coming to Craven Park. It probably shows you what standing the club and the facilities, the stadium have got in terms of obviously on the back of holding other concerts as well. It's not the first time, of course, that we've had a big concert. It was interesting, wasn't it, when the club announced that there'd be an extension to the East Stand, a temporary extension, which will, of course, be seating, that Paul Lakin referenced the fact that it would bring up the capacity of the stadium to something like 25,000 for concerts. And now when you look back and the fact he mentioned concerts, you start reading between the lines. And of course, there was the announcement that Coldplay, they teased it on their Instagram over the weekend. I picked up on it yesterday. And then, of course, it was announced today. And also, what you might look at, Graham, is that the fact that there could be other concerts, because it's no mean feat, is it? Putting a stage up, doing this pitch coverings, all the infrastructure that goes on around a huge concert like this, that potentially in that window of a week, there could be other gigs announced soon.
Yeah, 100%. If the stage and the logistics are in place for a 2-nighter, then it's no big deal to leave it in place for a 3 or 4 night opportunity. So yeah, it might just be, like you say, that particular week of activity where we see something else perhaps tagged on the back of it or prior to it. As a real showcase statement for the stadium again, of having big name acts away from the rugby itself, but turning the stadium into an income generating opportunity away from just match days. Yeah.
And before we talked about Coldplay, Graham, that intro I just did was a lot of shit, wasn't it, really? I was trying to read about 4 different things at the same time and came up with a jumble of words that included your name and I think Coldplay. So we got there in the end.
Yeah, it's not often I get mentioned in the same breath as Coldplay, Johno. So
yeah. Well, I'm sure Chris Martin's looking forward to coming over to East Hull. Probably the first time Coldplay played Greatfield, unless they did any early gigs in maybe I don't know, on Long Hill or in Crow's Nest or somewhere like that. Or yeah, it'd be the first time they come, but it's going to be a special occasion. I'm sure it'll sell out. And the good thing as well is that people might not have picked up on. Tickets have been ring-fenced for certain postcodes out there, or a certain amount of tickets have been ring-fenced for people with HU postcodes and some of these surrounding areas. So hopefully people have got a fantastic opportunity to go attend that. Graham, talking of entertainment and A-list celebrities, the Robins travelled over to Leigh on Friday night and came back with a rousing 24-0 victory over Leigh Leopards. I was at the game and, a bit of a tough opening, let's say that. And then after Rovers went in front, it was just total control from the Robins, something that I didn't expect, to be honest. I was very nervous about this game.
Yeah, likewise, John. I was nervous and excited in the same breath, and it sort of balanced itself out and didn't really know what to expect prior to the game. But it was evident to see in that first sort of 20 minutes or so that our intensity levels, our attitude, our effort areas were exactly the same as they were the week before. And that was the worry for me, that we had a bit of a lull post-Wigan. And it was super pleasing to see that we didn't, and we maintained that intensity. And I think that first 20 minutes absolutely gassed Leigh. They had nothing to offer in attack. We absolutely suffocated them. And by the time they did get the ball, they were getting it in really deep areas. They weren't as fluent as Leigh usually are. And look, these guys were on a, was it 9 out of 10 they've won or something like that? So they were absolutely no mugs whatsoever. And dare I say, we put in an ultra professional performance. There was a bit of adversity in the game, as there usually is when Rovers are playing recently, which we dealt with much better than 7 days prior. And I think we put in a super professional performance, and dare I say, a Wigan-esque performance of being absolutely on it from minute 1 to minute 80 and not giving them a sniff of opportunity. And thoroughly, like you said, controlling the game from minute 1 to minute 80.
Yeah, we knew 𝗬𝗄𝗏𝗏𝗏 wouldn't be playing. Of course, he copped a ban last time out, didn't he? Obviously, there was late drama in terms of 𝗬𝗂𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 not being available. That meant a reshuffle, particularly in the second row. As predicted, Hadley started at prop with Jesse Sue, and then we saw Matty Staunton come in to partner James Batchelor. The bench, probably the most, well, not the most surprising player, because he's done that role for us previously this season, but Tom 𝗲𝗏𝗏𝗏 came onto the bench with Jez Litton, Sam Luckley and Jack Brown. It's a funny old bench, that, isn't it? Because if you'd have tried to predict that earlier on in the season, you know, many people maybe being a bit sniffy about it. But do you know what? When you look at the course of the game and the interchanges and how some of the players who did come on then contributed, it worked perfectly. And I think that was a demonstration of our dominance over Leigh. That it was a complete team performance, squad performance. When you look at, you know, having a centre on the bench, for example.
Yeah, and it's unusual, but I think we've seen 𝗲𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 fill in at back row. And I think that was the purpose of him being in there as part of that suspension. Those rotations was for that potential back row. I know Gildart went off and he interchanged with Gilly.
Well, that's what I was going to pick up on, Graham. Do you think that was a very deliberate or
tactical, or?
Yeah, do you think 𝗲𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 was always going to be in, regardless of the Tanganoa injury? We'll never know, will we?
No, we're not. But I think, going back to your point, Johno, I think the way that it played out, I think, again, it's credit to Peters for his squad selection. He's got it absolutely spot on. Credit to the players as well, not just the 1 to 17 that were on there, but sorry, the 1 to 13 that were on the field, but the 4 interchanges that came in and out as well, because you wouldn't have known that we lost Evans, we lost Tanganoa, and we obviously is a massive loss to us pre-game. But you wouldn't have known whenever the interchanges occurred that there was a drop in performance, which you can sometimes see. I think that's all down to attitude and discipline of players, which is, again, that singing from the same hymn sheet as the way that Peters has set it up and set the game plan out, and everybody's bought into that. So that result and that performance overall, and Peters made reference to it when he got first asked, was the biggest positive on that was the 0, the big fat duck egg next to Leigh's score, because to keep them to 0 as we did, I think was a tremendous effort from 1 to 17, and it just proved to me that we're in a great headspace mentally around approaching games, especially following that defeat to Wigan the week previous and how we react to it. It just proved to me that we're in a good shape, which I think most viewers, most listeners will agree. We haven't always had that for a long while. We've been very fragile when we've had those narrow losses, and it's took us a little while to stop feeling sorry for ourselves and bounce back. But absolutely, we put in a thoroughly professional performance where we left that result where it needed to be, which was last week, and completely focused on this week.
Yeah, I love that mantra from Peters. Let's not moan about it. What can we do about it? Let's move on. We can't change the past. We can't change what's happened, but we can do something about it going forward. Yeah,
definitely. And again, I think Mike's just acknowledged it in the chat there, John, as well. It was a thoroughly good team performance, and that's not just the playing squad. It's the backroom staff, the coaching staff as well, that are the team behind the team that gets everybody ready and in tip-top shape, both physically and mentally, to be able to turn out week in, week out. And these are the pointy end of the season, the really big games. And it feels like we've been talking, every game's been a big game for the last 6 or 8 weeks or so, where we've been playing either a top 6 contender, a top 4 contender, or we can't afford to slip up because we'll lose second place, first place, whatever. Every game's a big game now, and that's just going to be the same. So for us to continue that on that journey and that juggernaut, if you like, of that habit of winning, it's a difficult one to stop liking and enjoying when you're winning. The hardest bit is to get back on it when you've had a wobble. And I say we proved that we can do that after the Wigan game, and long may that continue into the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, what impressed me as well from the Robins game was the kicking game. We've used it to great effect, didn't we? And we saw that in terms of some of the scores. But we was able to turn Leigh round, on many occasions. But then not only do that, put attacking kicks into difficult positions for them to defend. I think Moylan, he looked very suspect under the high ball, didn't he? And you could see, it can't have been just that Rovers were gaining more confidence by doing it. I think it must have been a set plan for them to go and target Moylan, and we reap the benefits of doing that. And some of Mikey Lucy's kicks, absolutely fantastic. And I think, I had a bit of a spat with somebody who said, Mikey Lucy's kicking game, he didn't have one. Well, I tell you what, over the course of this season, granted, if I'd have had the same comment last year, I'd have probably agreed. But he has come on leaps and bounds with his kicking, not just from the tee, but his gameplay kicking, his attacking kicking, his defensive kicks. It wasn't that long ago he got 2 40-20s in one game. Outstanding kicking from him, and 2 tries as well. And for me, he's dead set for Man of Steel.
Yeah, 100%. I think I agree with the kicking side of it as well. I think his kicking game has come on leaps and bounds rather than it just being an aimless kick. There's now purpose to it. So when we're in an attacking kick, you can sort of pick the box he's going to kick toward, and it's usually in that 10-metre box in the corners. And then we've got a game plan that defends that from there. So it's a set player. I think if you check on the 40-20 stats for the season, he's up there as well as someone who's completed several of those over the season. And I think with his defensive kicks, he can get a hoof on it as well to give it a good 30, 40, 50 metres downfield. And again, turn something that's been relatively defensive from our end as a kick, if we apply the same effort levels that we have done and then get upfield, it then turns us into an attacking option given the strength of our defence. So I think there is an all-round improvement in Mikey's kicking game. The bits that I think were tactical, and I think you just sort of highlighted it there, Johno, was around Moylan. In commentary, they suggested that he had some sort of rib injury as well. Right. So testing him under that high ball with oncoming traffic is going to really test him physically and mentally as to whether he's up for that challenge with a potentially damaged rib or two. So there were 2 or 3 occasions where he got out jumped by Tyrone May for 2 tries, and then that one in the second half where he sort of knocked it on for the no try for 𝗏𝗏. But it didn't look comfortable all night at all, and I wonder if that was a clever tactical move by the backroom staff to put that in the playbook as a let's target, let's see if his ribs and he are up to that challenge. And yeah, on a few occasions he wasn't.
Yeah, and there was 2 main talking points from the game for me, Graham. One of them was the Tom 𝗏𝗏 no try. The other one was the Elton John tribute act, who I thought was absolutely fantastic. If he was at the game, I'm sure you'd appreciate his efforts. Do you know when you get a tribute act who proper goes for it, who really thinks he is? He had the horn, he had the piano, a little bit of everything. So that was my main takeaway, apart from, of course, the Elliot Minchella yellow card. We're obviously suffering the hangover from it now in terms of a 2-game suspension. I've just seen that I think the club are trying to defer the tribunal for it because they want the right defensive team in place for it. I don't know. Does that then mean that he carries on, or if they can't have the I don't know. The article that I've seen has not been very clear on what that actually means.
Yeah, I presume that when you defer it, you can only defer it within the same week of gameplay. Otherwise, it's an unfair advantage if he goes on to play this weekend.
Yeah.
And then has it. So I guess it has to be deferred until potentially Wednesday, Thursday at the latest. But it sounds like that they're putting together a crack team of, I guess, legal people to sort of argue the case here. They must feel that strongly about it, and quite rightly, I think, with the importance that Minchella brings to the team, they should do. However, I think there's an occasion here where we've seen it, I guess, all season, where we've seen them being punished, these types of incidents, whether you agree with it or not. The thing here is that there's been a consistency to it. Now, again, I think that there's an element of Minchella could have avoided that scenario. We were comfortable in the game. No need for that to happen. If it was a genuine accident, then fair enough. But he could have stood off a little bit. He didn't need to swing the arm and even give anybody an opportunity to look at it around the head. He could have quite easily just waited, seen the ball drop. He had no need to follow it through in such a way. So again, that's just a tiny detail. Ifs, buts, and maybes. We'll see what happens pending the appeal. But as we sit here now, he's looking at a two-matcher, which means this week against Leeds, and then the first week of playoffs is missing for us. So yeah, we'll all hope it goes successfully as an appeal, and we can get it down to one game, for example. I don't think there'll be any way it'll be removed completely. But on the flip side, it could go the opposite way. We've seen it where the panel or the people that make the decisions have actually increased the penalty based on appeal. So it's a fine line we're treading here, but we must have confidence. I think that a thing that's going for Minchella in this case is his track record in the fact that he's not up in front of the disciplinary week in, week out like some players. Think from memory he's got a pretty clean slate this season, so hopefully that would go in his favour. And if he can plead, accidental or whatever it was, and successfully, then it might be reduced to one. Who knows what the panel will decide? But it's certainly a precarious situation which we have to potentially plan for, being without him definitely for the Leeds game, but also potentially for the first round of that semi-final in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things, isn't there? There's the facts what you alluded to about Moylan being injured, and obviously it did become a tactic for the Robins, didn't it, where they were trying to target him, and Minchella's probably guilty of just mistiming that contact. You'd say there was a little bit of mitigating circumstance in that as Moylan caught the ball, he was dipping, and then you've got to adjudicate, was that pace as he went down? Is that the reason why Minchella connected where he did? I mean, he wanted a clenched fist, he wanted a closed hand. He made contact with the head, but he didn't necessarily, hit him with full force, did he? Which is why when I started looking at the gradings, because, let's not forget basically he's pleaded guilty to a offence. What Rovers are basically arguing is the grading of it.
Yeah, there's at least one match coming. Everybody has to accept.
Definitely one match.
Yeah.
Now the challenge here is Rovers are trying to reduce it to a match, and they run the risk of a frivolous appeal, which is probably why they're taking as much time and getting the right people in place to appeal it. I reckon the only chance, Graham, is if you look at the gradings, 15.1b, when tackling or attempting to tackle makes contact with the head or neck of an opponent. It's obviously careless, intentional, or other tackling offences. If they're trying to reduce it, they'd have to go to A or B, which is careless. There's a range, but for me, it's careless, initial contact with ball or chest. Well, I don't think it's that one.
No.
A, B, careless, ball carrier dips. I think that'd be one potential, and then it's any high tackle or strikes with head, arm, shoulder, elbow, forearm, or shoulder charge. So there's that, or they're looking at the lower end of the C offence, which would turn into a B, which is reckless, tried to tackle, but reckless about the outcome. Because what you would say is he didn't then wrap his arms around him to complete the tackle. No. So I think they're the 2 points that they'll be looking at to try and reduce it on. But I wouldn't be able to say with any certainty whatsoever that it was obvious that they've come into play. So I hope they do appeal it, and I hope they get it right, because ultimately we want Elliot Minchella. He's our leader. He's our skipper. He's a fantastic player. He's so important to that side. We want him out on the pitch. You would say, though, that the Robins have rolled the dice on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that just goes, like you said there, Johno, and I mentioned a second or two about the importance that Minchella plays in terms of the leadership qualities that he brings on the field. He absolutely locks up that middle unit for us, and it is vital. And I think we've seen the games where he's been missing this season. Yes, we've had a game against London where he was rested, but I think we lost against Warrington off the top of our head as well, which was noticeable that Minchella wasn't there. So I think he's vital to us, and a lot of that hard work that goes on in the middle is done by Minchella, both in defence and attack as well. So I think it'd be a big loss. We can absorb it for one game, but we would want to hope that we've got him back for the semi-final game, if we go to semi-final. But I think you say it's knife-edge stuff, this, as in it could go to one game, it could be upheld as 2 games, it could be increased to even more if the panel feel that the appeal is sort of wasting time and justify the increase. So yeah, when it happens, I'm not quite sure. I don't think, like you say, they've made that clear within the article, but they're certainly asking for that deferral to put together a crack team of people to help defend this situation.
Yeah, 100%. And then to just further add clarity, because I wanted to make sure that I'm giving the right information about Minchella's appeal, because Willie Peters, of course, recorded his press conference early today. This is what's been said. Hull KR head coach Willie Peters has revealed that club captain Elliot Minchella will not have his disciplinary hearing until next week. Typically, disciplinary hearings and appeals are held on the Tuesday evening immediately after the match review panel finding. In Minchella's case, that would have been tonight after he was handed a grade C charge of head contact yesterday by the match review panel. That carried a 2-game ban, something that would rule the Hull KR captain out of the club's final regular season game and 1 game in the playoffs. The Robins immediately confirmed their intent to appeal the grading. As things stand, that playoff game will be a home semi-final, meaning that Minchella would not return to leave the grand final or pre-season. Peter's confirmation that the appeal will be heard next week was revealed in the club's weekly press conference ahead of the Leeds game. The boss, Hull KR boss, stated, "It'll be next week now, so it's with people above me, but the final decision will be made next week. But obviously, missing Minnie is a big loss for us." So, yeah, let's see how that plays out, Graham, because we're not in the lap of the gods, because it's not pure guesswork, is it? But it's basically trying to convince a panel, I guess, that they was wrong or the original findings were wrong, and it's based on the evidence that the Robins provide. So let's see how that pans out.
Will he be able to play this week, Johno? Sorry, mate. Will he be able to play this week?
Missing, so
right, okay. So they must be taking that as one match then, and it might be that's sort of deemed sufficient if the appeal goes successful. That it served his one this week.
Yeah. The other thing as well is, and this is what I didn't have time to properly look at, is that it was a grade C charge, wasn't it? The lower end of the grade C charge is then based on how many other offences players had over the last 24 months. So it gets really confusing, without going into great detail about the players' disciplinary records, about them records. So I think for me, it looks like the best chance is getting a grade B offence, which would carry the 1 game. Who knows? I mean, I suppose it's a conversation that Willie Peters won't want to be having, because in a way, talking too much about Minchella then goes away from the fact we have got players to step in. Matty Lane on YouTube says, but we have players to cover. Hadley will move to 13 maybe. So it's not, the be-all and end-all.
For this week, we can absorb it. Yeah, this week we can absorb it. Hadley goes to
I'm sure it's a conversation Willie Peter will have wanted to have very quickly and very shortly and moved on from it, because...
Yeah, they'll be talking about Friday night already, playing with potentially Hadley at 13. Whitbread comes back in and takes Hadley's spot at starting prop. There's not too much shuffle around there. That's not too much disruption at all. Look, we can still qualify for the playoffs, win, lose or draw on Friday evening. Obviously, we want to win to guarantee second spot, get a week off, guarantee a home tie. We're guaranteed a home tie anyway It just means an extra game if we finish in third. So, yeah, they'll be planning for action without Mini on Friday, and I'm sure Peters and the crew will be well on with that now as we're sort of part way through the week building up to Friday. But again, we've got to trust that the selections that Willie Peters have made so far this season have been pretty much bob on, that the coaching team and will get this right again for the 17 they put forward on Friday evening.
Yeah, 100%. We've got still so much to come. We're catching up with Rhys from the Leeds Rhinos Lock Pod to help look towards the game on Friday night. Of course, we've had the news that officially announced that 𝗪𝗂𝗧 is departing the Robins. We also talk about Rhys Martin incoming, and of course, we'll talk a lot more about the Salford game. That's all the here and now. Let's go back in time, though, with Keith's Corner. Keith, great to have you on the Robin Pod Weekly once again. Remind us where we finished last time, and where we're going to pick up from last time.
We finished, let me have a look. We finished around the 1930s time, right? We've now gone to 1945, right? Just after the Second World War had ended, the first coach that Rovers had was ex-first-class referee Stan Adams. Well, Stan was also my coach at Boulevard School in West Hull. He used to give us a threepenny bit if we won and nothing if we lost. You could call him my first professional coach. The early post-war years were hard times for the club. They stranded at the bottom of the competition with little money. It was widely thought that things would quickly return to normal once the war ended, but this was not the case. There's no money in the country. Rationing continued and living standards were even worse than during the war. It was a patchy season for the Robins, winning most of their home games, but winning only 3 away games. The highlight of the season was the local derby in front of 16,000 supporters when we beat the others 23-9. And on the 13th of January 1946, another one of Rovers' finest days, they took on and even the mighty St Helens, even then the mighty St Helens. Missing 5 regular players, Rovers allowed them to give a new boy, Emlyn Richards, his debut. And what a debut. He scored 4 tries, and there'd never been such a magic debut for Rovers ever, and Rovers won 26-7. The same year, Hull City opened their new ground, Beaufry Park, having leaving their old ground, which had been their home since 1906, at the Circle on Allaby Road, which later has become MKM Stadium. So they say things go wrong, and they do. 𝗬𝗪𝗓 was 1946-47 season. 𝗬𝗪𝗓 was appointed coach in place of Stan Adams. They had an excellent start to the season, winning the first 5 games. But then reality set in. They got thrashed by Wigan 50 points to 2. Some things never change. We went on to win the championship. Things didn't improve much. They lost to Hull FC in the Yorkshire Cup semi-final. And they had 8 defeats in the next 9 games, including another loss to Hull FC. It was a bad winter of 1947, with no games being played in February, extending the season to the end of May, with the final 6 games being played in 19 days, and they only won 2. Things improved a little bit in 1948. Rovers were the best club side. We have met on tour, stated Bill Buckley, the Australian team manager, after Rovers had turned them over 17-12. It was the first time Rovers had ever beaten a Kangaroo side in 40 years. We then move on to 1950. At that time, a season pass, ground pass, was £1, and a seat ticket was £2.05, or about £2.25 a year, don't forget, not a game. The season opened to a disaster, losing to Warrington 55-3. They'd only winning 4 games on the derby on Christmas Day, drawing all 3 at the Boulevard. The run after the holiday period showed a bit of an improvement, but only 7 wins and a draw out of 21 games. An easy win over the Black and Whites eased the pain, but LFC still finished higher in the competition, right? We move on to 1951-52. On the 6th of October, the first Rugby League match was shown on TV when Great Britain played New Zealand. And the first Wembley Cup final was shown on TV on the 19th of April. Another first for TV was the floodlit game of any code, any sort of football, was shown when Bradford Northern played the Kiwi Tourists. This year was a terrible for the Rovers, who finished 25th out of 31. After winning the first 2 games, they only won 5 times in the next 30. This included losing 2 derby games in one season, a feat not done since 1936-37, and losing a home game for the first time since the war. In 1953, the Queen Elizabeth II ascended to the throne. It was the first major television event to be televised worldwide. Winston Churchill put the coronation back, saying it was not a single day should be lost from working after the war. Anyway, Rovers fans started the season in great spirit, but soon disappeared when Rovers finished 29 out of 30 clubs in that season. One game at Hunslet, the 3 Rovers players, Tulloch, Turner and Barraclough, all scored tries, were sent off in the same game, losing 12-0. Hunslet also had 2 men sent off. The referee abandoned the game with only 5 minutes left. Things were odd in them days. Even Johnny Whiteley once said, when he was memorising these games, when he talked about travelling to a derby fixture on a public transport, the Christmas Day buses ran long enough to get the supporters back home. When the players came out the ground, the buses had stopped and no one had cars in them days, so they all had to walk home. Nobody could afford a taxi, so all the players had to walk back to West Hull. I thought that was a good idea, that. Then we come to the top players of that era. Alec Docker, one of the finest loose forwards ever to play for the club. Unfortunately, was the same time as some of the bleakest years in their history. Docker joined Rovers from Craven Park Juniors, although he had 6 trials at Hull FC, but they didn't want him. That was as a centre before joining Rovers as a winger. In 1937, he made his debut in 1939. He joined Halifax for a spell during the war before returning to Rovers, making his debut in the first team against Rochdale Hornets on the 25th of August 1945, playing in the centres. Unlike the one worn by the modern game players, he wore a distinctive shabby scrum cap. He was also club captain 1947-48, playing in his favourite number 13 shirt. He represented Yorkshire, England and Great Britain before retiring on the 20th of April 1953. Played 255 games, scoring 53 tries and 133 goals. One player I must mention, who was a rising star at the time, was a young centre called Derek Turner, making his debut against Bramley on the 5th of September 1951 when Rovers lost 6-2 at the Old Ballymore ground. Derek went on to greater things when he joined Wakefield Trinity and played 24 representative games for England and Great Britain, there to become a great coach, taking Castleford to Wembley. Well, that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next week.
And there we go, the ever enigmatic Keith Pollard shining a light on Hull Kingston Rovers history. I'm sure you enjoyed that one. Now, to look ahead to the Leeds Rhinos game on Friday night, I was joined by Rhys, who, of course, takes part in the Predictions League. We discussed the game on Friday night. We discuss Rhys Martin. We discuss the breaking news that 𝗪𝗂𝗀𝗴𝗏 will be departing the Robins. And, of course, we discussed that deal that involved 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗏 coming to Hull Kingston Rovers and Sean Lunt going the other way. Rhys, it's great to have you on the Robin Pod once again. You've been on a few times before. And, of course, you feature in the Robin Pod Prediction League, although I will say not to any great degrees or levels of success at the moment, as you're currently propping up the table, and it looks like you're going to finish the season bottom of the league based on your predictions of the whole 𝗂𝗂𝗋𝗴𝗀𝗀 scores this season so far?
Yeah, probably appropriate considering Friday's fixture. Clearly, I didn't have as much belief in KR as you folks did, and you've had a fantastic season, to be fair. But if my, as I say offline, if my NFL fantasy is anything to go by, clearly I'm not very good at predicting at all.
Yeah, we've got obviously the Leeds Rhinos on Friday night. It's the last game of the regular season. The Rhinos travelling to Craven Park to take on the Robins. Of course, Robins fighting for that League Leaders Shield, and Leeds still having plenty to play for as well in terms of the playoffs.
Yeah, it's. I think I said last week that I felt that the play when I was submitting the player ratings form, that I felt that it was the penultimate thing, and it's still strange to feel so defeated and for us to still be in a chance in the playoffs. I'm really disappointed in Sky that it's not on one night. I mean, it would just have been so much better for the sport to have Wigan and KR playing at the same night, and then Saints, Leigh and Leeds all in the shout, and put Catalan in there as well. It'd have been a great last Friday of the season. But yeah, no, it's an interesting. I'm not feeling as hopeful as I was hoping to. I'm not feeling as excited. I think I'm still probably overcoming the drumming by Wigan last week, and I think that's taken a hit in my confidence going into the weekend and also the playoffs as well, to be honest, because it felt that the difference between a league leading Shield contender or challenger and us is quite vast at the moment, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course. Leigh play St Helens, don't they? St Helens in 5th spot.
Yeah, and we need St Helens to win that because I think we're within reach of Leigh on points difference. Oh no, 1 point above Leigh. So if Leigh lose, we can go above them.
Yeah,
but
so that it's not a gimme goal, is it?
If Leigh win, we don't have the points difference to go over Saints, so we really need a Saints win, which I don't like saying. Yeah,
and I mean, of course, Saints look like they might be just getting their act together at the back end of the season. Leigh, we don't know what they're going to do. I mean, I expected a tougher game than what we encountered at the Leeds Sports Village on Friday night. Leeds, of course, though, we're trying to wonder what we can expect from them because we saw them pretty much pummeled 38-0, I think, against Wigan, and the inconsistency over the course of the season that you've obviously witnessed and probably frustrated at. You're probably wondering which Leeds side will turn up as well on Friday night.
Yeah, it's strange because we have been inconsistent and we managed to get those 3 wins on the bounce. Obviously, 2 of those teams are against London and your neighbours Hull FC, but London, we were inconsistently and really we should have lost against London. And Hull, we managed to get back into form, but obviously in recent weeks you've seen Hull's form and everyone's doing the same to them at the moment. So it wasn't really a measure of where we were, and I think we were very well grounded last week by Wigan, by a very good side, and never really felt into the contest. And I think going into Friday, it's probably going to be the hardest atmosphere for the season, I think, for the Rhinos, because you guys are going to be emphatic. It's probably been one of your best seasons in memory, and to be challenging for that League Leaders Shield. So Craven Park's going to be absolutely wild. So Leeds can't afford to turn up half-heartedly. We've got a playoff spot to play for. It's in our control in that sense. If we win, it's in our control in that sense. But it is difficult not knowing who's going to turn up, but they're going to have to turn up on Friday because it's going to be an amazing atmosphere on Friday. And if Leeds don't rise to the occasion, I can see it going one way only.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a strange one on Friday because, potentially the League Leaders Shield could be all done and dusted. But of course, with Warrington playing London and the fact that Leeds are needing the victory, there's still a lot going on it. So I agree with you. I do think it's going to be white hot in terms of atmosphere. And I think that's a lot to do with it being the last game of the season. And you're right, it's a shame that all games aren't taking place at the same time. I remember, was it Leeds and Warrington when they had the helicopter going between the 2 grounds?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, obviously the probably one of the best. I mean, obviously we talked about Burrows trying the grand final in 2011, but Ryan Hall's try in 2015 with literally seconds to go, and obviously the famous commentary just screaming Ryan Hall. And prior to that, it's going to be a draw. I think it was between us and Wigan, wasn't it, for the League Leaders Shield that year, and the helicopter going between. But I think Sky have missed a massive trick, and I don't expect you guys if Wigan go ahead and win Thursday night, I still think that you guys will be coming all guns blazing. You'll want to be running in form into the playoffs. you'll have that home tie, so that'll already be secured, but you'll still want to finish the season on a high in front of the crowd. As it's probably, I can't, you have to tell me when the last time you finished so high in the top division in Super League. So I can't imagine you'll go half-hearted if it's sorted the night before.
No, second place will be the highest we've ever finished. So there's, there's a lot there, isn't there? And of course, the home playoff tie, which is so important. And I think the players definitely deserve to finish in them top 2 spots. Hopefully, come Friday night, it's top spot. But of course, we'll see what happens Thursday. One player you'll be hoping that brings their kicking boots, and one player will be hoping that doesn't bring his kicking boots to Craven Park, at least until next season, is Rhys Martin. I think Leeds, did they hold their official end of season award ceremony last night as we recorded this on Tuesday, and Rhys Martin was named the supporters player of the year.
Yeah, it was the fans player of the year. Ash Hanley got player of the year, but yeah, Rhys Martin was the fans player of the year.
And there's no doubt as well, isn't he, that Rhys Martin is held in such high regard. He's probably been the standout player along with Hanley in what has been probably a disappointing season for you. What can we expect from Rhys Martin? What do you think he'll bring to the Robins next year?
He's just Mr. Consistent. You'd probably put him in the top probably 3 players since our last grand final victory in 2017. I think he's been one of the best players since then. He will always put in a minimum 7 or 8 out of 10, really, with Rhys. He's an outstanding player. He commits. He's consistent. He's fantastic at running lines and in attack. He's there in defence. Obviously, his kicking game is, his off the tee is, one of the best in the league. But he's someone that pulls out the rabbit out of the hat on occasions. Take the London game. He scored 20 points out of the 21 that day, a day when we weren't playing well. And on those days, it always typically is Rhys is the one that's the standout player. So I'm not surprised he was fans player of the year. It hits me kind of sore, really, that he's leaving and he's got the fans player of the year. But I think that is recognition of how high he's held in the Leeds Rhinos fan base. And I am gutted to be losing him. I'm really disappointed in him losing to a Super League team. I always thought I was hoping if he was going to leave, it'd always going to be NRL. But he's almost earned the respect to choose where he wants to go, but I would much rather him be in the Leeds Rhinos team next year.
And he's expected to play in the Pacific Championship, isn't he? He'll be featuring for Papua New Guinea for them. And what's been a feature of the signings that Willie Peters has made is around how he don't just sign good players. He seems to sign good people, players who have a bit about them, who can bring the leadership qualities. And I think Rhys Martin definitely fits into that mould.
Yeah, I mean, when the captain, when we had all our stupid leadership team last year or whatever, a lot of people were saying, no, Rhys should be captain, and people were still saying that in the off-season this year, and have said it throughout the season as well. So he is definitely a leader in terms of how he carries himself out of the pitch. And like I said, he is someone that if the team aren't playing well, he's a player that can pull something out of the hat and take that team over the line to win the game. So he is a leader. He's a very good player, very experienced, and there's nothing to say other than the fact that I'm gutted that he's going. But we've got to move on from it, unfortunately. But yeah, it's going to be a very different side for us without him next year. We're not going to get like for like for him. I don't think there's many players like him in terms of his second row ability, in terms of the running game. He consistently makes over 100 metres nearly every game. He's up there in the tackles and obviously his kicking game. You're not going to get someone that is like for him. So you have got a unique player in Rhys Martin. And again, who I'd rather not be losing. But that's a salary cap sport. Yeah,
and there's, it's not the only transfer deal between the two sides, is it? Of course, Rhino, it was announced early on in the season that he'd be returning to the Leeds Rhinos. I think he'll be starting the season, age 37. I've seen some Leeds Rhino support suggesting that they don't expect him to be a regular next season, which I don't know, baffles me a little bit, because for me, obviously Rover's tinted spectacles on, I still see him as being one of the best wingers in the comp right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, he put 150 metres on us when you guys played us at Headingley earlier on in the year. It's interesting where you're seeing he'll want to be playing in the first team, absolutely. And I think he will be coming into that spot. It'd be interesting to see how it fits, because Ash Hanley took his spot, obviously, when he left. Ash Hanley has number 5. He's on that left wing. So where does Ryan Hall come into that now? I know obviously wing can be played interchangeable on either side. It'll be very weird seeing Ryan Hall in number 2 if that's what shirt he's given, because he is a synonymous with number 5. But I think if for one season he's still fit, he's still big, he can still run. He's maybe not as quick as he used to do, but you've got Ash Hanley with the pace on one side, and someone like Ryan Hall, who's someone that you can kick to in the corner and be challenging in the air. There's always going to be a bounce back, hopefully. So I'm looking forward to seeing Ryan Hall play for us for another year. I'm glad he's finishing his career with us. It's an interesting one in terms of where it will go, because I think there are some youngsters in the Leeds Rhino side that will be challenging him and pushing him, but also to players that he can help grow. So I think it works for us both ways. Yeah, and what I suggest is that his injury record over the last, during his time with the Robins has been fantastic. You've seen him out on the pitch far more often than not, especially these last 2 seasons, which, for me, I think with him entering his last season, you'd almost say it'd be wasted to have him on the not featuring regularly in the first team. It'd be almost, he's too good to be a backup player. But like you said, it's then bringing them next youngsters in, isn't it? Although I reckon Brad Arthur will want some seasoned, experienced players there to probably guide them youngsters who are coming through. So interesting times for you. Like we said, Leeds Rhinos coming on Friday to Craven Park. I'm not going to ask you to put your score prediction in just yet, because I'll be getting that later during the week. But are you genuinely fearful of what could happen for Leeds, or is it just one of them where you've seen what you've seen over the course of the season and it's hard to suggest anything other than a Rovers victory? Yeah, I may be on my own in this one, in that when Rowan Smith went, my only priority really was who's going to be coaching next year and where we go. I was kind of like, look, the season's done. Not done, but I think my main priority was that we had the coach that was going to take us into the next year. The players knew where they stood. Ian Blease knew where he stood, so he knew what he was recruiting for, and we've got that in Brad Arthur. And I'm really, really pleased for us that we've nailed that appointment. We've got him in for next year, because I think that's probably that was the biggest priority for us from there. And I'll take whatever comes from the season. Now, we've seen Leeds react under Brad Arthur in game, and also after we've had bad performances. I'm not fearful. I'm mindful of KR and how good they've been. Mikey Lewis is probably the best player in Super League right now. I'm shocked that there isn't rumours about NRL with him, because he is probably the best player at the moment and he could do a job down there. But we know the talent in there. But Leeds have just got to front up for it. They've got to react from last week. They know they're going to walk into a big atmosphere. But it works for both sides sometimes. It depends how you approach it. And I hope Leeds, with Brad Arthur's experience, will approach it in the right way and use it to spoil the party. And if we spoil the party, it means hopefully we can sneak into the playoffs and have a late run. Yeah, well, hopefully not. You might hear a pin drop if you do. But it won't be an adventure for a lifetime, will it? But it's great timing because just as you join us to record this segment in this week's Robin Pod Weekly, it was announced officially that 𝗪𝗂𝗡𝗏 will be departing Hull Kingston Rovers, a player, of course, who featured for Leeds. I think 80 games he played. I'm going to take you back to the 26th of June 2019, Rhys, because that was the official announcement that 𝗪𝗂𝗡𝗏 and Sean Lunt would be swapping clubs. 26-year-old 𝗪𝗂𝗡𝗏 for 32-year-old Sean Lunt. One of probably Tony Smith's best bit of business for the Robins in terms of bringing 𝗪𝗂𝗡𝗏 over. I know I've got my opinion of him, but he was a great player for Leeds as well. Yeah, 𝗪𝗂𝗡𝗏, he was a phenomenal player for us. He played a big part for us in winning Super League in 2017. It was probably one of the strangest transfers, I think, in Rhino's memory from that direct swap. But he's proved that there was life in his career at Leeds, and probably shouldn't have gone for us. I'd have loved to have him stayed in the squad, and he's shown that at 𝗪𝗲𝗄𝗏, but he's still had a very good career. But I do think the time is right for him now. I think he's not played as regularly for you this year, whether that's due to injury or selection, but a great player for the Rhinos and part of that 2017 side. And yeah, I just look at that 2019 transfer from our perspective and go, that doesn't feel the right like for like. I feel like, if you're doing a trade analysis of the NFL, you go, that was completely imbalanced from there. So it was a shame to lose him, and he's proved these Rhinos wrong to right, they should never let him go.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about the deal without sounding disrespectful to Shaun Lunt. Of course, another player who'd been at Leeds and done pretty well in his early years. But when you look at where they was in their stages of the career, it was the deal was in Rovers' favour, definitely, because Shaun had been struggling with injuries. He'd done very well during his time with the Robins, but when you started getting to 32 years of age and you're in that position, to then get someone like 𝗪𝗂𝗧 who'd been in the 2017 Grand Final winning side as well, who's still got the best year of his career ahead of him. 119 games he's racked up for the Robins so far, and I know he's desperate to sign off with some silverware. He's already experienced it, like I mentioned, with Leeds, and he's desperate to finish his time with the Robins with something that he can hold aloft at Old Trafford. Like you've already said, a fantastic servant to both clubs and to the game. And he's, for me, Rhys, a player who glides through the game. You very rarely see him, I don't know, getting in confrontations or
He can put a good hit in, though. He can be strong at the contact when he needs to be.
Oh, yeah, and that's been one of his. If you look at the last 3 games, Rhys, for the Robins, I think 𝗂𝗧𝗏's been up there as being one of our top 3 tacklers, and he's on a number of occasions he's racked up 40 tackles. He's always in the 25, 30 plus bracket, so he does do the dirty work, and it's interesting to see how he's dovetailed with 𝗀𝗲𝗏 over the time. But I think the time is right for him. No doubt he'd have had plenty of offers from other Super League teams, but I suppose in this game that we're in now, where you're looking at being able to retire with all your faculties and being able to then go back home to Australia and being able to then live another life almost in a different profession. And, it's a fantastic opportunity for him. And I know supporters of both clubs will be sad to see him go. But, yeah, he'll go with our best wishes. And like I said, I think what just made it not bizarre, but the how the deal came about in the first place. And it was interesting. It was the same day for you, Rhys, that you swapped Robert Lou for Lowhigh as well.
Lowhigh, yeah. So,
Lowhigh,
I mean, you could argue that one worked, really, because Louis, we won a Challenge Cup under Rob Louis. I kind of liked him, really. But, yeah, I don't mean any disrespect to Shaun Lunt. He helped us in 2012. When we won a grand final with Shaun Lunt in 2012. He was a great player. But, like you say, it was just the age and the future and the profile of those players. It just didn't make sense in those circumstances.
Oh, it's the same problem I have, Rhys, when I talk about the deal, because it sounds like you're being disrespectful. But it was just like I said, it was just favoured in one club more than another. I mean, Shaun didn't really then go on to do much at Leeds, did he? After he signed?
No, unfortunately not. No.
Yeah. Well, Rhys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Looking forward to seeing your score prediction. For
how late can I make this? Because I feel like it might depend on Thursday night.
Yeah. Do you know what? Normally, I'm the one who leaves it till late. I might give everybody up until 10 o'clock on Thursday, because it could change it. And of course, we don't know what will happen in terms of squad selections. We don't know if there's any injuries. Have you got any early team news, Rhys? We
won't have Ash Hanley. He's out, and Lachie Miller, I believe, is out as well. So that will mean that probably the same as last week, 𝗪𝗓𝗏 will drop into fullback, who obviously played in round 2 and had a fairly good game, other than I think one drop he had, but that was his first start at fullback in round 2. And obviously Riley Lum, another academy player, will probably take Ash Hanley's spot as he did last week, and he's shown lots of promise. So that's team news that already existed from there. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Although I don't know whether Lachie Miller not playing, who that'll benefit most, to be fair. He's definitely been Marmite this season, hasn't he?
I think towards the end of Rowan's terrain, it was going in the wrong direction. I would say Brad Arthur has brought more simplicity to his game, and he's had more better games than he has his trend has gone back upwards. I think obviously this injury in recent weeks hasn't helped. But I think all fans just need to remember he's not that experienced in rugby league. He's primarily a sevens player. He's coming to rugby league late. The skill set's there. Sometimes he does make those mistakes, but those mistakes have been decreasing throughout the season. So I do enjoy watching him. He's a good player to watch, but I think sometimes it's just those elements of that rugby brain and learning it and that experience that are missing. But I would say we're trending in the right direction. But Alfie at fullback, he got young players.
Always great to hear from Rhys from the Leeds Rhinos Lot Pod. We're going to go back into the history books now as Steve Till joins me once again for Robins Remembered. Steve, it's great to have you back on the Robin Pod Weekly for Robins Remembered. Who you got for us this week?
Well, it's not often that a player who plays just 12 games for Rovers becomes a legend. And it's not often that an English or British rugby league team sign a player who's a current international for Australia. But that's what happened with Arthur Beetson in 1968. Arthur was playing for Balmain in the Sydney League. He played in the 1968 World Cup for Australia. And in that same year, he signed for Rovers. Of course, we had winter league. We were playing in the winter. Australia were playing in the summer. And there was a gap of about 18 weeks where players came over from Australia, played for a club team, and then went back and continued their next season. And Arthur Beetson was one of those players. And Arthur Beetson was a total legend of the game. After he played for Rovers, he went on with a career that surpassed anybody else in the game, I would imagine. He was instrumental in starting up the State of Origin as it is now. And he played in that first State of Origin game where they picked not players, they didn't pick players from the league, they picked players from the state that they were born in. And Arthur led the way in that. But with Rovers, he played 12 matches and he was a huge, massive player. I can remember watching him and thinking, where have we got this fella from? And he played 12 games for Rovers. He scored 1 try, but he was due to play another 6 matches. But on Christmas Day, and this was the last Christmas Day derby we ever played. We used to play derby matches on Christmas Day. On Christmas Day, he turned out against Hull, and halfway through the first half, he went over in a tackle and broke his leg. But Arthur being Arthur, he got up and wanted to play on with a broken leg. An absolute legend. And he tried to play on, but the last picture we saw of Arthur that the Hull Daily Mail ever took was him sitting up in bed in hospital with a plaster around his leg. And that was it. But I do know that such was Arthur's love for the club that he used to visit Colin Hutton regularly during the close season. And it was Arthur that brought that Queensland team over. I think it was 83, wasn't it? When Queensland came over, the famous Mark Broadhurst incident with the punch. Queensland tried to kick us off the park. Arthur Beetson was the coach. And that team, we beat them. And then they went to play Wigan and Leeds and put 50 points on each of Wigan and Leeds. And they were so upset at getting beat by Rovers that Arthur approached Roger Millward and Colin Hutton and said, can we play you again? Can we fit another match in so we can play you again? And both of them declined his kind offer. we got the record of having being the only team to have beaten Queensland. But that was Arthur. A real, I can remember going in 1988 to watch the Great Britain tour of Australia, and Rovers organised a boat trip courtesy of Peter Mortimer, who played for Rovers, and Arthur Beetson. We all after we all had that boat trip, Arthur Beetson invited us to his pub, and we had a rollicking good night with big-hearted Arthur. And when he died, there was a early day motion in the British Parliament, in the House of Commons, which paid tribute to Arthur, an Australian, which was a real honour indeed. So that was Arthur Beetson, heritage number 713, and can you excuse the noise in the background?
There you go, Graham. Great memories for you, no doubt, when you reflect on supporting Hull Kingston Rovers, especially after listening to Keith as well in Keith's Corner. Very quickly, Graham, before we go straight to question time, Matty Parcell up there with probably one of the best hookers in the history of Hull Kingston Rovers. Certainly, probably one of the best hookers in the modern day era. Just a fantastic player, and not just what he did in terms of performances, but another one of them players who played a massive part in lifting the standards, the everything about Rovers to getting us where we are now.
Yeah, I'm not that old, by the way, John. Going back to the 1930s. But yeah, I've mentioned this before, and I think that deal with Sean Luntz signing for Rovers first of all when we got relegated, and then that subsequent swap with Matt Parcell for Sean Lunt at that particular time in 2019 was absolutely pivotal to where we are today, 5 years on from that, as in the calibre of player that we were able to attract and the quality of what Matt's done for us over that particular 5 years. I think we've seen the best part of his career, which has been fantastic for us. And like many, just wish we could have potentially maybe squeezed one more year out of him while he's in this sort of form and playing well for us. But yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned it on Twitter earlier on, John, one of the best number nines. He'll be certainly up there with the likes of Hodgson, etc. When we talk about number nines, our best number nines, all-time number nines, whatever you want to call them for Rovers, I think Matt Parcell will be one of the names that certainly the modern-day fans will throw out straight away as being an absolute great for the club.
Yeah, I suppose, Graham. And like, the only thing is, it's like he's in his prime, isn't he? He's still doing it. He's not like, we're not talking about an over-the-hill player who's playing big part minutes and is being put out to pasture and his time's done. We're talking about someone who's having a massive impact on the Robins this season. And I don't know if anybody's read his comments yet about, obviously what's on the official club website about him departing. I do think he wanted to stick around. And it's just a shame he isn't. But, it's the club's prerogative to move in a different direction, isn't it? But the fans' reaction on social media is one of disappointment.
Yeah, I think so. I think everybody expected it with the announcement of McIlroy earlier on this season. I think if you go back to last season, Parcell and Litton playing, it was probably Litton that was coming to the fore. But those roles have reversed this season. I think most would agree that Parcell's been outstanding when he's played, and certainly the last block of games that we've had, it's been Parcell who's been getting at least 60 minutes, and then Litton's been coming on for those sort of cameo 20, 15-minute periods to join the game. So, yeah, I think you mentioned it in the chat with Rhys there about him gliding through games. It seems effortless to him, and he never sort of looks in trouble as a player. Everything he does seems logical. He hardly makes mistakes in game as well. So he's got a very clever rugby brain on him. He's got that scoop that we all know and love. He's got a decent kicking game as well. And like you said as well, he does those hard yards in the middle where he puts in 30, 40 tackles per game consistently week in, week out. So, yeah, I think like many will agree that he's playing at a very high level and would have wanted to. There might be other reasons behind the scenes that has meant his choice was either made for him or he's chosen to make it for whatever reason, and we respect that decision. But yeah, as a fan, I would love to see Matt try and squeeze one more season out of him if it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, well, just like Rhino, let's hope that the team and we get the chance to give them the send off deserved, because the two fabulous players, particularly Parcell and of course Rhino, absolutely fantastic. Right, question time. Graham Adam Wadforth on Facebook, he asked, with Minchella missing on Friday, who do you reckon will be starting at 13? Staunton, Tanganoa or someone else? Well, some team news. Tanganoa, he's missing on Friday, as is 𝗪𝗱𝗋𝗋. I think probably we expected that with the HIA, but Willie Peters in his press conference has confirmed Tanganoa will not be playing. Who do you think is going to go to loose forward, Graham?
Yeah, I think it's a straightforward one, this Johno. I think Whitbread will come back in at prop and Hadley will move back to 13 straight.
Keep starting that second row.
Leave him as he is. Again, just a quick shout out here for Matty Staunton. I think he's been very good for us last few weeks when he's come in, either off the bench and certainly from the starting lineup last week, played a full 80, I believe, last week, and didn't look like he'd been in and out of the team. He looked an accomplished player last week for us. So, yeah, I'd leave Staunton and Batchelor where they are in the back row.
Yeah, Gary Lee, he asked, does the panel believe, as I do, 2023 and 2024 is the beginning of a long relationship with the top of the table?
It's certainly looking that way. Everything's pointing towards it, on the field and off it as well, in terms of the coaching setup, the infrastructure of the board, the direction that the club is taking. Everything is geared up towards being that top 2, top 4 contender consistently, challenging for semi-finals and finals. I think and hope that the blueprint that Willie Peters and the backroom staff and the board have laid down now, everybody's seeing the rewards for that. So it should be used as a way to fine-tune and hopefully take that final step towards consistently being up there and not this just being a one-off season. I can't see it as long as we've got that mindset and the ethos that Peters is instilling into us. Let's hope that's a fair shout.
Yeah, Mr. Hull Rockers on YouTube, he asks, what do you think of Salford's team selection for Thursday? They must think Saints will lose or they'll drop to 5th and no home game. Of course, at short notice, the Wigan-Salford game was moved to Thursday night. Salford have responded, I don't think necessarily to that move, but they've responded by putting out, let's say, a weakened squad. I'm sure I've seen that it's either 6, 7 or 8 players in that squad have never played the first team for Salford.
I think there's nobody of note left in there, Johno.
Yeah.
Everybody who would you class as a first teamer, I think, has been rested this week for Salford. So I think that League Leaders Shield is firmly on its way to the brick.
Yeah, and you'll see the result against Leeds for Wigan to see how red hot they are. I mean, to be fair, against Rovers as well, how well they did, albeit against 12 men for 20 minutes. But I suppose if I remove myself from being a Hull Kingston Rovers supporter and I take a look at our game and how we are trying to appeal to new markets and get new people on board with the sport, not necessarily supporters of clubs, the TV viewer, the armchair viewer, the person who might take a passing interest in rugby league. Friday had the potential to be a huge night for Super League in terms of the League Leaders Shield. You had the playoff battle, didn't you? You don't know who's finishing where in the playoffs. You don't know actually who's in the playoffs yet. And I just feel like it's a bit of a, this is nothing to do with Salford. I just think, I don't know, all games should have been on the same night, made a real feast of it. A bit like the NFL red button stuff, what they do, where you can pick between games. You've got one main channel where the commentators are, there's one commentator telling you what's happening at everywhere else and what this means, live league tables, you've got reporters at the games, make it a real feast of rugby league. And ultimately, and I do think Sky do this deliberately, because for them, it's all about the grand final. It's almost like this end of the season is almost like just being downplayed to the point where, on Thursday night, you might as well give Wigan the League Leaders Shield pre-game. It's just gone to such a damp squib. Although there is still so much to play for it, I just think it's been underplayed, and I just think, I don't want to say rugby league as an umbrella, but someone's shot the game in the foot here with this, because it could have been so much more.
Yeah, so somebody's made decisions to make it as it is. So the decision makers have ultimately got to answer those questions, because I agree with you that final day jeopardy. Whether it's the Premier League, whatever it is, whether it's going up,
any sport, would
anything, where there's jeopardy involved, it hooks people in. And we saw last weekend with the blowouts in the games. At the back end of a season, you shouldn't be getting 60 odd put past you and class that as a meaningful game. It's sort of dead rubbers, and there was too much of that last week for my liking. And like you say, with this weekend and the jeopardy of who finishes top 6, who finishes top 2, who gets the home playoffs, there's plenty of jeopardy there, and there could have been a lot made of it in terms of that word you used, John, of a spectacle. But it seems that Thursday night will just be a walk in the park for Wigan, and that's the league leaders done. The only real jeopardy is our game against Leeds as to whether, Warrington are expected to beat London, and then it's either that or the Salford Saints Leigh conundrum as to who, which order they're finishing. There's no real. It's either a home or away tie for one of them, and that's the only bit that needs sorting out. So I think if they'd have mushed it all together and packaged it up as, well, the league leader's still outstanding, there's jeopardy from 7th to getting into the playoffs, and this is the live updates as it's happening. Like you say, picture in picture, let's go across to to Craven Park now and see what's happening there, and all of that drama. There's an opportunity missed there, like you. I think that they could have made something more of it, but somebody's made those decisions to put those games as they are and remove some of that.
Yeah, and I think for me, the part of the disappointment is that we wouldn't have been focusing on relegation, almost a negative aspect of the game. The people potentially losing their jobs, going down. We'd have been focusing on the positive aspects. Finishing in top places, finishing potentially going to Old Trafford, selling the dream of Old Trafford. Anyway, it ain't happening, is it? So it looks like very much so that Wigan will be presented with a league leader shield, barring a miracle from Salford, and I hope they do it. I genuinely hope they do it. But when you look at the squad they've put out, it'll be a tough job for them. A question for you, Graham. What's the best type of biscuit to dunk in a nice hot brew?
The best biscuit, without doubt. And if anybody wants to argue with me, then I'll stand in the car and argue with you. It's the milk chocolate hobnob.
Oh, Graham, synergy. I'm down with that one. Not in a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, but a chocolate hobnob. Yeah, I am definitely a hobnobber. Paul Nelson on Facebook, he asked, should we have a whip round for Derek Beaumont and his pending court case?
Correct. Yes, let's do it.
Well, I'll tell you what, we marched down Aldous Road before, didn't we, to save Rovers? Maybe we should organise another whip round. Interesting stuff to come from Derek. He was supposed to come on the podcast last week, but what many people won't realise is maybe why he's shooting from the hip at the moment. He buried his brother on Monday, and he's been dealing with a lot of stuff going on with him there. So I think things are very raw for him. But if he wants to set up a GoFundMe page to send Hull FC down, and he's going to hire a top QC. I'll put a fiver in. One more question, Graham. It's the last one, and it's in relation to the current Hull Kingston Rovers squad and comparing it to the 2009 semi-final playoff team. The question is from Carl Franklin. He asks, prior to this, the team that played Wigan, who would you swap? Right, I'm going to read out the team for you here.
Yeah.
Briscoe fullback, Fox and Colburn on the wing, Webster and Wellham in the centres, Cook and Dobson in the halves, Nick Fozzard and Mickey Vella at prop, Daniel Fitzhenry in the second row at hooker. Of course, Newton and Glear is second row, Morell loose forward, and then on the bench it was Wheeldon, Lovegrove, Neverton, and Chazai Hansen. Wow.
Yeah, that's a throwback to some of those names.
That is a throwback, isn't it?
Yeah, not too far away either, that in terms of numbers of years. What year was that, Johno?
2009.
So what's that, 15 years ago?
Yeah,
obviously you've got to go on prime where they're playing at now, and I think that back row, as in the backs, sorry, I'm not sure I'd swap any of them out at the minute. Webster in his prime was devastating as a centre. I like Jake Webster when he was in his prime. The others, I think we've got better on offer now. In the halves, Cook and Dobson were lethal. Dobson, we all know what Dobbo's qualities are. A different player to Mikey, but talismanic for us at the time. So either or of those. Mikey's still young in his career and learning, so I think he's got the opportunity to be equally as good, if not better, than Dobbo for us. So, some would argue that Dobbo in his prime would do it, but Mikey's got age on his side at the minute. Front row, yeah, I think as we are with that, Mickey Vella, again, I don't think he'd be punching holes like Sue is at the minute. So quite happy to retain what we've got there. I love Galera and Newton. Always have done, having seen them back in the days of 2011 to 2014, 15, whenever it was. Absolutely magnificent for us as a pair. So again, maybe those two in the prime would get my vote. And yeah, I think Minchella hands down over Scotty.
Yeah, and it's funny, Graham, when we talk about the club moving on and where we are now, the crowd for that game, that home playoff game against Wigan, bear in mind, who had finished 6th in the table that season, 8,162.
Okay.
And it was a 30-16 defeat. So, you know, there's lots of markers in there to see how we've moved on and how things have changed. Ultimately, though, it's underlined by silverware, isn't it? And that is the rubber stamp on any great team, any great player. You know, a trophy elevates players from here to there. And this is what we're all striving for. So hopefully we get a positive result on Friday against Leeds Rhinos, which gives us the week off. We get the home playoff, and then hopefully all roads lead to Old Trafford. But this Hull Kingston Rovers side, they're certainly showing the way at the moment. Graham, thanks for joining me on the Robin Pod this week, of course. We are powered by Budget Tyres Auto Centre, the only car specialist trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of the Hull Kingston Rovers. For now, live, love, laugh and be happy.